Now I'm going to complete my image by adding shadow and texture to fully realise the idea of a 3D space. Since we're using Photoshop, I'm going to be using the layer style tools to create these effects relatively easily. If you're unfamiliar with these tools, they're simply a non-destructive way of creating styles such as shadows, overlays, glows, and 3D shading, which update depending on the shape and scale of your object without ruining your design. With these tools, we can create shadows and textures without having to create extra layers or shapes. To start with, I'm going to be adding the textures to my objects, starting with the business card. So to get into my layer style, I'll double click on the grey area of my layer in the layer panel, and that opens this box. I'm going to check bevel, and then that allows me to select the texture, and you should see already that clicking this creates a bevel effect without inputting anything. I want to edit this effect and reduce the bevel effect. So to do this, I click on my bevel tab, and now I can reduce the size of that. Then we can go to texture. And from here we can choose different types of pre-made textures. So I'm going to try raw linen first. And I think that's too boxy for me, so I'll try linen weave. And since that's more subtle and what I'm going for, I can just adjust my scale and depth to something which matches our mock-up. When I'm happy, I'll just click OK. Another thing you can do if you want to emphasise the idea of a spotlight on your work is to use gradient overlay and change the blend mode so it sits naturally on top of our card. And then play with the opacity to make it more natural. I'm happy with the idea of soft light and matte effect, so I'm going to undo that and leave it to how we had it. Then I'm going to apply the same styles to my bottom card. And now onto the iPad screen. This time I don't want a texture, but I do want a glossy shine. So I'm going to go to Gradient Overlay and start by putting my gradient at a bit of an angle. So I'm going to put it at 105 degrees. Then I'll turn my opacity down to make the effect more subtle. Then I'll add the same effect to my iPhone. So now onto shadows. Again, I'll enter into my layer style, and I'll start this time with my iPad. If we click on drop shadow, we can see that it already comes pre-made. And I can make it more prominent to emphasize the depth of my iPad with distance. At the moment it's a bit harsh, so you can use size to soften it, and I normally like to lower my shadow opacity too. Then I'll play around a bit more and click OK when I'm done. My iPad layer needs a bit of tidying, which has come up from the shadows, so I'll erase the bits which are causing any problems. Keep in mind that styles take into account the whole layer, so any holes or floating objects will also be affected. Now I'll go ahead and add the same setting to my iPhone. Finally, with my cards, you want to acknowledge that the depth is much thinner, so I can make sure to create a sharper, smaller shadow with again a low opacity. And as a final tip, if you want to copy effects across, you can just click on your effect while holding down Alt or Option on a Mac, and by dragging this onto your chosen layer, this will copy your effect across. Finally, a nice way to create more texture and realism in our piece is to add a background. So I'm going to bring in a wood texture and place that behind my objects. Since the angle is a simple overhead, I'll just leave it as it is.